I'm on. Leamington, I guess, right? Yeah, that's. Am I live, guys? Am I live? Hello, everybody.
You are live.
Awesome. My name is Illia Nyzhnyk. I'm a chess grandmaster. Yar yar yar. I'm here with the Grandmaster's Choice. Today is my first day working as a grandmaster in residence for St. Louis Chess Club. I'm happy to see everyone. It's been a while. I have been very busy traveling, but now I'm back home. I'm not going to travel anymore until the end of the year, so you guys will see a lot more of me from now on. I still know how to play chess, according to my my latest result. So I got a chance to warm up a little bit playing an I am Norm round robin tournament. Yeah, I know. It was a good friend of mine who was the tournament's organizer. He asked me to fill in the spot, to make it possible for other people to make norms, and I felt like it's, not only is it going to make a lot of sense for me to play just to help him out, but also it's going to help me get back into playing shape. So today I would like to show you guys a couple of the games from this event. I'm not sure what kind of stream title Ben came up with, something about me crushing the event, while in reality the games I'm about to show you guys will demonstrate a couple of things I was getting wrong, but so did my opponents. So that's, I kind of felt like it's going to be a good learning experience for everyone. And so without further ado, let's get started, shall we? So this is game number 1, where I was playing with black pieces against Nicky Ladan. And Nicholas, I've played him before, I believe, and he, despite being, I would say that his rating is lower than his actual playing strengths. And fully equipped with this knowledge, I decided to approach this game in a little bit of a different manner than I would normally do it. So here, facing Nicholas's Jubal London. Right, so here he goes ahead and plays knight c3, which is considered more or less a Jubal London / Berry attack. This is an opening lines that I've used myself from white's side quite a bit, because if black doesn't know how to react to this properly, white can actually win very quickly because of a couple of pretty nice attacking possibilities, such as queen d2, trying to play bishop h6, trading away black's dark squared bishop, which is about to be fianchettoed to g7, but that's not what Nicholas went for in this case. He just played simple e3, and after bishop g7, here comes another attacking idea that white usually uses in these Berry attack structures, which is h4. I would say that it probably makes a lot more sense for white to begin with bishop to e2, because it's a development move that white will most likely make anyway, right? So your bishop will likely go to e2. It doesn't really want to go to d3, because if it does go to d3, it's going to be looking into a black's pawn chain. That's why e2 is a very typical square for the bishop to go to. And the idea here is that we're making this move anyway, right? So we know that we need to develop our bishop at some point anyway. We figured out that e2 is the square to do it. And so we're making the move that we know we are guaranteed to make at some point if we don't play it right now. So bishop e2 is also meant to wait for black to make a decision, and usually because black has already fianchetted the bishop to g7, typically black goes ahead and castles, and this is where white would play h4, because now as black is castled, this pawn rush makes a lot more sense, right? Because the king is already on g8, so now white is more incentivized to open the h file for their rook so that they can attack the black king. But because black is still not castled here, then h4 I would say loses in strengths. As this is why I kind of figured out that maybe because white has already committed himself to the attack on the king side, which doesn't happen all the time, right? White has other plans, so this is just one of the many. And over here, I decided to willingly delay castling to make this plan less effective, right? So once again, this plan becomes less effective as my king is not on that side of the board just yet, so it's not as scary for me to face h5, because my king is still on e8. White opening up the h file is not going to help them attack my king all that much as of right now. So I played c6, which is a standard response. I know that c5 is a main line. By the way, the funny thing is that during my game number 7, which happened on Saturday, I tried playing this line from white's side, and in that game we'll get there. In that game, I did play it with the correct move order, playing bishop e2 first and then following it up with h4. And my opponent in that game did respond with c5, which I believe is the most accurate, response to this idea. There's a saying, against attack on the side, respond with breakthrough in the center, and that's exactly what's happening here. White is trying to attack on one of the sides of the board, so black responds by applying pressure against white's central pawns. Makes a lot of sense. Here I decided to go with a different strategy. I played c6, which is more of a defensive / developmental move in nature, right? It helps me defend the central pawn on d5. It's taking away the b5 square, where the white knight usually goes. By the way, in many lines, white does end up playing knight b5, hitting the pawn on c7. Here, it's no longer going to happen. And I'm also allowing my queen to get out and go to b6, beginning to hit the b2, right? So that's kind of drawback to developing the dark squared bishop so early, because the b2 pawn becomes a bit weaker. So now after bishop e2, I did end up playing queen b6, and here comes a very important thing, right? So here, if white wants to defend the b2, they would need to make a choice. Usually it's either playing something like rook b1, maybe playing queen. Although playing queen c1 feels a little bit weird, right? I think white doesn't really want to have the queen on c1. That's not usually that's not a good place for the white queen to be, since it blocks the rook's connection, right? So usually what you want to do is you want to get the queen out of the way and then connect the rooks and put them on the open files. In this case, obviously, there probably won't be any open files for quite a while, but the ideas remain the same, right? You don't want to have your queen being on the way of your rooks. So this is why white usually plays either rook b1 here or a3. And actually, my opponent did end up playing a3 here. And the tricky part about playing this position with white is that a couple of things have happened so far, right? So white have already invested themselves into attacking on the king side, right? Usually, when you begin a pawn rush on one of the sides of the board, chances are that you are essentially telling your opponent, okay, I'm not going to castle to that side, right? Because if the more pawns you push, right, white can also go ahead and play g4 if they want to, and if I allow that, right? Because here, actually, guess what? The main response that black has here is to play h5, kind of taking care of all those potential pawn breakthroughs, right? So with h5, I'm getting better control over the g4 square. Obviously, needless to say, the h pawn is no longer going to go anywhere. So h5 is the main response here. But once again, going back to me explaining what has happened just now, right? So with white playing a3, if white is trying to think of a way for them to castle, it becomes quite complicated, right? Because white has already played h4. Chances are that white king is not going to go to the king side, right? Because h4 has already been played, meaning that this pawn can potentially be used as a hook, and all these weaknesses that come together with white playing h4, like let's say the weak g4 square, right? So that discourages white from castling short. But at the same time, if you're trying to come up with a way for white to castle long, right? Because if you don't castle short, then you probably castle long. So if you try to think of a way for white to castle long, it quickly becomes apparent that castling long is also impossible right now, right? Because what would you normally do to castle long? You would move the queen out of the way, right? So here, let's say I made this move. I didn't play h5. I played move h6, and I'll explain myself why I did that a bit later. But now, if white would need to castle, they would have to move the queen out of the way. But queen d2 runs into simple capture, right? I can just go ahead and take on b2. For those of you who don't know or who couldn't see why queen b2 wasn't working immediately, it's because there's this move knight a4 that traps the queen, because queen has nowhere to go, and the white rook is defended by the white queen, which is the whole point. So now, if white queen decides to move out of the way, or to move away from defending the rook, black can now just go ahead and capture the b2. Once again, not only is white going to lose the pawn, but also white can already forget about castling long. It's not happening. And so here comes a little dilemma for white. What to do? Where to castle? Because now, as white played a3 and their pawn on b2 is suffering a continuous attack by the black queen, it's actually physically impossible for white to castle, and that's why while this line can be sometimes dangerous for black to deal with, if black knows proper ways of playing against it, as you can see, white's attack will quickly come to halt, because they just can't. If you don't castle, if your king remains in the center, chances are that you will eventually be either having issues with your own king's safety, or you'll be missing out on some pieces that could potentially help you in your attack. So one of the things that is good about long castling in this case is that not only would the king be safer, but also the a1 rook would be able to join into the attack at some point, which is not happening here, right? White is not castling, therefore the white rook stays on a1, and so the chances of white's attack on the king side succeeding are significantly lower now. So the move h6 is a sideline, and the reason why I played it is because I was trying to avoid trading pieces. So if I play h5, I'm also committing myself to playing for this square on g4, and after something like this would possibly happen, let's say knight f3, and then let's say I play bishop to g4, and after knight e5, a whole bunch of trades will take place. Like, let's say bishop takes e2, knight takes e2, and here, because white knight on e5 is quite annoying, I will most likely have to deal with it by trading it away. And once again, I was trying to avoid trading pieces as much as possible, even though I didn't have to do that. It was just something I decided for myself once I reached this position here. Also, knowingly, I kind of knew at this point that white will likely fail their attack on the king side, and actually that's exactly what happened. My opponent quickly realized after knight f3, bishop f5, once again bishop f5 and not bishop g4, because I'm trying to avoid trades that occur after knight e5. So after bishop f5, by the way, I'm already threatening the pawn on b2, right? So white, even if white does decide to castle right now, after I can just pick up on b2, I'm attacking two pieces at the same time. I won a pawn, knight is under attack, pawn is under attack. I'm just gonna go ahead and collect free stuff from white, and white is getting exactly nothing for these missing pawns. So this is just a really bad spot for white to be in. And so after bishop f5, my opponent with his next move is completely giving up on any and all ideas of attacking me on the king side, because with a move like b4, as we already established, white wouldn't be able to make long castle work either way. But with b4, if white decides to long castle at any point here, they're just gonna die, because all these pawns can be used as hooks, and white king will get immediately exposed after those pawns are traded away. So white doesn't want to castle long anymore, which means that white's only choice, white's only option left, is to go ahead, accept quote-unquote defeat, that their attack is not succeeding on the king side, and white will eventually castle short. So after knight e4, takes. So knight e4 does allow the trade of the knights, but I had an idea to not allow my opponent's knight to come to e5, right? So e5 it's a tricky square, because once your opponent gets a white piece on that square, you would need to do something to get it out, because one of my ideas on how to, the idea that I had on how to win this game potentially would be to perform a pawn breakthrough by playing e5 myself, right? Whenever you have a closed pawn structure out of the opening, then one of the main ways for you to make progress is to perform pawn breakthroughs, right? And pawn breakthroughs involve trading the pawns away. So in my case, I said that e5 is going to be it. e5 is going to be the breakthrough I'll be playing for. And so I needed to make sure that no white piece stands in my way. So I played bishop e4. White went ahead and castled, and I played knight d7. So now, once again, a very position-specific idea. But if white decides to still have something on e5, and this involves a whole bunch of trades, right? Something like this would happen. because I haven't castled yet, because I haven't made a decision on where my king is going to be, now I get a unique idea that you probably don't see in common positions, right? And that idea is to play g5. Once again, very, very position specific. Just because white has made this move, this unnecessary, at this point, the h4 is just an unnecessary weakness that white has in their position, which, you know, luckily I can go ahead and use immediately by playing g5. An undermining move. If white decides to take on g5, I think this is just signing, you know, signing their own death sentence at this point. The h file gets exposed. I will obviously not castle short. I will go ahead and castle long, double my rooks on the h file, and proceed with, you know, a very simple attack. At this point, I don't even have to think about what to do, right? It's just kind of all falls into place, and it's really nice when it happens, especially when you're playing with black pieces. When you have a bunch of good plans to you know, available to you, and you don't have to kind of think much about what to do, it makes it really easy. Right now, on the contrary, my opponent would have to think long and hard about how not to lose the game right away, which is always nice. So this is why, as soon as I reached this spot, I was quite happy with myself, all the way until my opponent made his next move, which was the move c4. And at first, I didn't think much of this move. I was like, okay, well, this now becomes, you know, a very typical, very typical Queen's Gambit / Slav type of structure, because you know, we see this pawn formation a lot in most d4 and c4 openings. So I was like, okay, this is nothing new. I've seen this before. I've played against this multiple times. So there's really nothing scary about white playing c4, or so I thought at first. But then I started calculating the normal lines, right? So I was like, okay, since white is already castled short, why don't I just go ahead and do the same, right? Because white king is on that side of the board. I'm no longer going to get checkmated there, so I can just castle into the same direction safely. So castle short. And here, after I calculated a little bit of this capture on d5, I quickly realized that, okay, after white takes on d5, I don't really want to take back with the bishop. Why is that? Can somebody in the chat tell me why do you guys think I wasn't very fond of recapturing back with the bishop here? What did I not like? Inviting e4 at some point, Sphinx e9, very nice. So what just happened is that white traded their side pawn for my central pawn on d5. What ended up happening is white now has a stronger center, simply because white just has more pawns there. White has two central pawns, and I only have one to do something about it. With the bishop leaving the e4, it is now basically a piece of cake for white to play e4 himself, unless I want to make some big positional sacrifices, such as, let's say, playing f5. Playing f5 is always going to be a double-edged sword, because yes, while you are going to be delaying the e4, you create weaknesses in your position. I'm not really a big fan of this pawn formation. Also, not a big fan of having a weak square on e5. So, not wanting to make further sacrifices just to be able to keep the position kind of going in an unpredictable direction, I just thought that, okay, I should probably not shoot myself in the foot here by getting into likely worse positions. So I thought to myself, okay, what if I just take back with a pawn? And now this structure you can see happen quite often in an opening line called exchange Slav, right? So this is an exchange Slav. The game begins with white playing d4, d5, c4, c6, and then white just decides to trade the c pawns, right? So both c pawns get traded away, which in turn creates the following structure with the only open file available to both sides. And the open file, obviously, that I'm talking about here is, and in the meantime, I can't remember for the life of me how to draw arrows. There you go. So the open file I'm talking about is obviously the C file. And what ends up happening is the following problem, right? The problem being that because this is the only open file available, both sides are more incentivized to try and occupy it. And what ends up happening in turn is that a lot of trades will happen on that open file, right? neither side can really completely occupy it, because there's always some trades available. And I was like, I was looking at this, and once again, with all the attempts, all my attempts to try and reduce the amount of pieces that are getting traded away, I was very unhappy, because I knew that the only way to avoid trading is to give up the c-file control, but that's not something you want to do in positions like these, because once you give up the c-file control, that gives your opponent a green light to invade your position, right? If I just move my rook away, there's going to be some rook c7, and then white will double up on the c-file, and I will not like it. Well, obviously not queen c2, but probably queen c1, as c2 is literally under attack. So once again, not something I was. That's how I lose usually. Yeah, well, this is the tricky part about playing chess, because you just making good moves is oftentimes not enough. You also need to make sure that you have enough resources to make stuff happen. Here, there is only one thing that's happening, is the play on the c-file from both sides, and once again, wasn't a big fan of it. So over here, I realized that, okay, wait. So if I don't castle right now, then I need to do something right away. I need to do something here. I need to make the position dynamic enough for me to even have a remote chance of winning it, right? So what I decided to do eventually is I decided to take on f3. And now this is now different, because if white takes back with a pawn and I castle and we kind of go into the same position, now I have targets, right? Now the c-file is no longer the only thing I can attack. There is the pawn on h4, there is an exposed king on g1, right? So those become my potential targets, and I would be actually, very happy to play this. Obviously, when you're playing someone who understands how chess works, then they're not going to be going into positions like these, because it jeopardizes their own chances to win the game, as now they have something to worry about. It's not necessary, let's not expose our king. That's probably what my opponent thought to himself, and he was completely correct, because there's no need for any of that. When you can just go ahead and recapture back with a bishop. Now, here comes the idea that I had, and that was just to simply take the pawn. This is funny, because most of my lectures, most of the lessons I give, most of the concepts that I teach have, in one way or the other, something to do with the fact that material, oftentimes taking extra material at the cost of something. So usually, if you end up winning, let's say, a pawn or a piece, it usually comes at a cost. If it comes for free, then you'll probably just end up winning the game easily, right? Because there's nothing to worry about. But usually there's always a price to pay, and I've always been a big advocate of the fact that usually the price that you have to pay to win material is too steep. It's not worth it winning stuff if the end result is you being unable to either develop your pieces, or you being unable to hide your king, or you having to give up the center or the piece activity or whatnot, you name it. So I advocate for intangible advantages over tangible advantages, right? I advocate for piece activity as opposed to winning material, and here I am going against myself and going for extra material as opposed to fixing the problems with my position. So my opponent has taken a very smart approach here, because he says that, okay, so I want to have my rook on c1 anyway. In this case, it's even better, because it's attacking the c4 at the same time. So he went ahead and played rook c1, which is a great move. At this point, I've invested myself into this idea of winning material, right? This was not too late to play short castle, and now if I just want to make a draw, it's actually relatively easy for me to do. I have my good old friend, the breakthrough with e5, after which a whole bunch of pieces get traded away, and the end result is the following position, where both sides are actually doing quite well. White can go ahead and connect the pawns. And then once again, we'll have a relatively similar situation, because there's this one open file, the d file, and both players will most likely try to play on it, which is going to result in a whole bunch of trades, and the game will likely end in a draw. Whoa, that's an ad. One more strategic chess games. Tired of early resigns. Oh my god. Wait, that's not. I should apply. Wait, I should. I should definitely get that one. Whew. I mean, guys, watch out. C74, having answers to all your chess problems. Anyway, not trying to make a draw. Like at this point, I was more than actually close to 400 points higher rated than my opponent. And at some point, it becomes close to impossible to outplay someone. I know only one player in this world who is able to beat players as strong as 26 and 2700 Grandmasters on a consistent basis, and that is former world champion Magnus Carlsen. But I would say he's a special case. I would never dare to say that I'm nearly as good as Magnus, and he just does something that other people can't do physically. Like he just has this special skill that allows him to squeeze out even the drawiest of positions. And so I can never say, well, maybe not yet, maybe one day, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes for me. Anyway, Queen A6 was the move that I played here. Obviously trying to further keep the C4 pawn safe, keep it alive, and White can't really stop me from castling, right? Unless I do this, right? So once again, another perfect understanding of the situation by my opponent. White has a bishop pair advantage, right? This position is still quite closed, and keep c6 b. Yeah, so yeah, b5 is something I want to do. White can't play b5 here because I will just go ahead and take it with my c pawn. My b7 pawn being defended makes it all nice and easy. So this is not very helpful for White. But d5 is. D5 is a kind of move that attempts to open up the position. White once again. For the second time, White has a bishop pair. It is very important. I'm not sure how many of you guys. Wait, is this thing standing on a wire? No, it's not. Never mind. Sorry. I'm not sure how many of you guys have seen some of the games from the match AlphaZero versus Stockfish, but in that match, by the way, AlphaZero is an AI engine created by Google, I believe, and the way AlphaZero won a big portion of its games against Stockfish is by sacrificing material to get a bishop pair. And after seeing some of those games, I have gained this innate belief that bishop pair is the answer in many cases, and I still believe it to this day. The bishop pair is a massive advantage over a bishop and knight or over a pair of knights, but that is given that you can get that bishop pair into a very specific type of position, which my opponent that's exactly what my opponent is trying to do here. My opponent is trying to open things up, making the bishops significantly stronger. So d5 is doing exactly that, and I can no longer, well, I cannot castle just yet, right? If I castle here, obviously this leads to me losing my extra pawn back. White would take on c6, my knight on d7 is attacked twice, I would have to move it away. This is actually just losing, right? So if I have to move the knight away, White goes ahead and picks up the b7. Now White can also promote the very next move. So I'm in a big trouble here. This is just probably over at this point. So I decided to first things first, let's make the c4 pawn secure. Let's get that out of the way. So I went ahead, played c3. My opponent took on c6. Now this is where the intangible advantages kick in, right? So at this point, you guys can probably already see that I have a whole bunch of weaknesses in my position. Both c6 and c3 pawns are not great, while the c3 pawn, I would say it's a little bit better than c6 because it's a passed pawn. It's advanced quite far, and it has a potential of becoming a nuisance, which it eventually did, luckily for me, which allowed me to win the game eventually. But here is the interesting part, right? So we're getting to it. It's quite literally happening in the very next move, right? So Queen b3, I went ahead and castled. White to play. I'm inviting you guys. No, not long castle. I'm not kind of some kind of madman, right? To castle my king into bombs and drones, shooting everywhere. That's exactly what would happen to my king. It would just die in a fury fire if I had a castle long. So no, let's not do that, and let's just take it slow, you know, make sure my king stays alive for a little bit longer, and just go ahead and castle short. So now what I'm gonna do actually for you guys is I'm gonna flip this board, and I'll make you guys look at this position from white side, and I'm inviting you to find the best move here for white. And we can logically explain why this choice, why this decision is objectively best for white. Go ahead and give it a shot. With the speed that I'm describing things, I will probably just only be able to do one game. I'm even slower than Sarah. Oh my god. Sorry about that, but at least I'm not sure if Sarah was asking people questions or not, but I'm asking questions, right? That makes everything okay, right? Right?
No problem.
Okay. Ben said it's no problem.
It is Grandmaster's choice, so
it is no problem.
It's your game.
Oh, it's just one game, yeah. I'll try to get faster. Eventually, okay, come on, guys, chat, quick. We don't have much time left. I mean, wait, you saw the engine arrow? What engine arrow? I don't have any engine arrows. What engine arrow are you guys talking about? But was there an engine arrow? I didn't see any engine arrows. You guys are just cheating. Let's stop. Okay, yeah, Inspector got it. Okay. So why is rook takes c3 the best move here? This is just simply a continuation of my previous statement. What do I mean by that? Material doesn't matter if you have extra material but you are unable to use it. It doesn't matter. It only begins mattering as soon as as soon as you can use it for aggressive purposes, right? The point of the game is to checkmate your opponent's king. If your extra piece or whatever, extra material, extra pawn, extra exchange, just like here, if you have that but can't use it, and you are preoccupied with a whole bunch of other issues, chances are that you are still in trouble, you know? You have the extra piece to play with. This allows you for some flexibility, right? If your issues, like if your weaknesses, if your king's safety becomes too much to deal with, you can sometimes, actually oftentimes, it's your only choice. Oftentimes the only choice is for you to give the extra material back to, you know, occupy your opponent so that you can finally get enough time to solve your issues, right? But isn't that kind of horrible, right? That's not what we expect when we take an extra piece seemingly for free, right? We are expecting to use that piece for aggressive purposes to help us win the game. And when we can't, things can go south really quickly, right? So over here, couple of reasons for why this is so good for white. First of all, bishop pair position has become open. Bishops will be extremely strong. Second, there is an easy target, actually quite a few of them. The c6 pawn, easy target for the light squared bishop on f3. The h6 pawn, easy target for the bishop on f4. Also, the bishop on c6 will get double and triple attacked once white plays rook c1, which I'm pretty sure they will. Right? And third, black's king safety. With the dark squared bishop now gone from the game, this is why carrying the bishops can sometimes be quite tricky, because you are investing a lot into your bishop staying there for the rest of the game. As soon as the bishop is gone from the g7, g2, b2, or b7, those are the common fan carrying spots, right? If your bishop is at some point gone from that spot, then all the squares that are that the bishop was controlling, they become extremely easy to take advantage of. And this is exactly what's happening here. I know I have a lot of arrows here, and I'm gonna try to fix that right now, but okay, there you go. No, what? okay, I keep guessing the color wrong. Anyway, I hope this makes sense to you guys. Right now, black's biggest issue is obviously the king safety, and that involves the h6 pawn hanging also, right? So I think here the fair reaction would be for black to go ahead and play king h7. That's actually what I was planning to do in the game. And here white can further weaken black king's position by playing h5. This is the ancient solution. I'm going to show you guys what the ancient suggests. I did acknowledge, during the game I acknowledged h5 as an idea, but I did not see this move, which is some kind of science fiction, because the c7 is not like it looks like you're just throwing the bishop into the lion's den, as it can be easily attacked by the rook, it can be easily attacked by the queen. But now the trick is, because we have exposed the black king by playing h5, we don't have to worry about defending our bishop, as we have a tactical motive that helps us defend it indirectly. Yeah, bishop c7. I didn't see bishop c7 during the game. I thought that my opponent can just slowly attack and eventually win the c6 pawn. That would be also fine, but this is just way more effective, because now the c7 bishop is surprisingly safe, as there is always this bishop e4 check idea, and you know, white will proceed by playing mostly on the queen side, and sometimes they will be annoying the black king at the same time. So this position is much better for white. It's not losing for black, right? Because black still, after all, has an extra exchange. So there might be some chances for black to give it back and regain some of the control over the game. But very, very important to remember that material only matters for as long as you can use it. And if you are, once again, too preoccupied with other problems, chances are that the material sacrifice that your opponent did was worth it. Okay, moving back. Honestly, my opponent not taking on c3. I'm not gonna say that I was some kind of, you know, prophet or anything. But while I did recognize rook takes c3 as the best move in the position, for some reason I was like almost 100% positive that my opponent is not going to do it. Why? Well, because I sometimes suffer from it too, but materialistic mindset is a thing, right? People oftentimes do not want to part with pieces because it feels bad. It just naturally feels bad that we are giving away our guys, our soldiers, and so, you know, I've made it my mission in chess to change that for most people, and to show them how irrelevant material becomes. Because remember, nobody cares if you have a whole set of pieces or just a single pawn. As long as you checkmate your opponent's king, nobody cares, right? Do remember that. So it's funny because it was almost never too late to take on c3. Even here, my opponent could have taken on c3 and kind of gotten the same position, but didn't happen, right? So my opponent saw a chance to recover the missing pawn, and he went for it. What does it mean? Well, it means that my pieces are now pretty well placed, and at this point it is too late for white to go for this, right? Because if white tries to go for this exchange sacrifice right away, the problem is that we are going to get into the endgame, right? And the endgame is not something white wants, right? Because white wants to use their bishops and the queen aggressively to attack my king. Here, the queen trade is inevitable. White would be forced to trade queens, and the result is the following endgame, where white might still be able to survive, because once again the bishop pair is just so good. But you know, it's about, at this point, it's about whether white can survive this or not, since they are down material and they don't have enough compensation to show for it. Yeah, beautiful, unintuitive move. Yeah, exactly. It's something that you don't usually look for during the game, but you know, sometimes thinking outside of the box helps. That's something I've been missing out on in my past games. Okay, so rook d8. My opponent went b5, and here I went queen a4, which I don't really have much of a choice. I don't really want to misplace my queen by moving it back to c8. Also, if I do that, this allows my opponent to go for an attack on the queen side, because you know, the pawns are actually quite good. Like those connected pawns on the A and B files are quite good. They have a potential of making a pass pawn if they reach b6. That's what white would do. So wasn't part of my plan. So I went queen a4, and after a bunch of trades, unfortunately for me, despite the fact that I have this extremely strong pawn on c3, I can never promote it. And the only reason for why I won this game is because my opponent screwed up. my opponent blundered big, right? So bishop c7, rook d2. Obviously, this is the best place for my rook to go to. It's a second rank. As you guys may know, if your rook stands on an open file and you are trying to infiltrate your opponent's position, the second rank or the 7th rank, if you're playing from white side, is usually the way to go, because on that rank there is the most amount of targets for the rook. In this case, I'm targeting these guys. My rook can potentially go to a2. I'll be targeting the a3 as well. Once again, my opponent, despite all the hardship he's been through so far, he finds objectively best moves to help, save himself. So bishop a5 is the move that I'm talking about. Prevents me from pushing the c-pawn, right? If not for this move, I would have gone c2, rook d1 by now, and I would have promoted. The game would be over. So with bishop a5, I'm forced to move my rook away, and I don't do it immediately, right? So the reason for why I don't play rook a2 here is because of bishop d5. Yeah, I remember now. This is why I wanted to include the e6. It may seem like I'm winning a pawn, but surprisingly, once again, the bishop pair, it's just insane how strong the bishop pair is most of the time. So here, bishops are just going to trap my rook, so I can never take on a3. This is why I began with e6. My opponent played bishop b4, kind of anticipating my rook a2 move, but unfortunately, I don't really have much else, right? I have to play rook a2 if I want to make some kind of progress, if I want to free up the possibility of playing the c2. I need to move the rook away. I could have played rook b2 here, but I wanted to leave the possibility of one of my pieces going to b2 if need be, right? And with my rook standing on b2, that's never going to happen. So I did decide to eventually play rook a2. And here my opponent played g4. Once again, because of the bishop pair and because of how strong the bishop pair is, my opponent can do pretty much whatever he wants and he will not lose this, right? Because anytime I play c2, there is bishop e4. This is why after g4, I played f5, trying to prevent bishop e4 from happening. So I want to play c2 and I want my opponent to either stand there or to promote it right away, which will never going to happen once again if my opponent has a proper reaction to this. But it did happen, right? So after h5, which is a fine move, right? h5, I did play c2, and now white needs to make sure that one and this one thing only happens, and that is that the king leaves the first rank. If the king doesn't leave the first rank, my next move is rook a1, and I will promote, right? With the king leaving the first rank, now anytime I try to play rook a1, white can just go ahead and pick up the c2 pawn, right? Not great. I need to look for another way to get rid of the rook, right? So I was looking at this position here, and I was checking bishop b2. No, not working, right? Bishop b2, white will still pick up the c2 pawn. Obviously, rook a1 not working. Rook takes c2 is happening. I spent quite a bit of time calculating the bishop c3, but in case of bishop c3, so all I'm trying to do with this is that I'm trying to trade off one pair of bishops and then use my knight to kick out the rook. This takes forever, right? This will never work. Plus, I think I might be just lost, because after bishop c3, white has a beautiful intermediate, beautiful intermezzo, b6. Now, if I take back with the knight, obviously the bishop is what it's going to cost me. If I take with a pawn, actually no, this is not a win, right? Because if I take with a pawn, I will lose the knight, but I will immediately regain the missing piece by taking on b4. And we're probably going to end up having some kind of draw in the opposite color bishop endgame. Something like this will potentially happen, and this is a theoretical draw, because with just a singular extra pawn, I can never really win this. Plus, another thing that helps white survive is that if a position like this is reached, then all white has to do is just keep the king in this corner. Why is that? Well, because this is what is known as a wrong promotion square. Just to demonstrate, well, it's kind of hard to demonstrate it, but what ends up happening is that if white ever has to give up their light squared bishop for my b pawn, the position becomes theoretical draw, because I can never promote my h pawn, since the promotion square is a light square and my bishop is dark squared bishop. So my bishop can never help me promote the pawn. Yeah, wrong color bishop. That's right. And so the way this game ended was abrupt and sudden. As my opponent claimed, he was too preoccupied thinking about his homework. And I guess that's why I got lucky, because I played knight c3, and after this trade, white has a very simple way to make a draw. I'm actually gonna flip the board and offer you guys to find it. It's something we already looked at. It's the only way for white to survive. That is to remove the c2 pawn from the equation. But in order for white to do that, they need to do what first? b6 again. Yeah, exactly. We're just trying to bring the light-red bishop back, and no, there exists no intermediate moves from black side because white pawn is a bit too close to be promoted. So I would, as black, I would have to take on b6, and now once again we would have reached some kind of opposite color bishop endgame, which is close to impossible to win, especially because most pawns are about to be traded away on the king side. So a relatively simple draw, and fortunately for me, my opponent hallucinated and thought that him picking up pawns on the king side will be faster than me trying to promote. So at this point, after the game, my opponent told me that he thought that he's promoting faster after he captured the e6. Unlucky for him, I just have a simple bishop takes a3, and my bishop is just on time with me promoting next. Here f6 only looks scary, but I can simply just force him to play f7, and now there is no piece in white's position that's going to help him promote anything on the king side, so the game ends. My opponent resigned here. So while I wouldn't say necessarily that I deserved to win this game, my opponent was playing very well, and he made no critical mistakes. Except for an inaccuracy of not finding rook takes c3, which would give him actually winning chances. This was pretty much a topic of most of my games. My opponents played very well, but at some point they were kind of screwing up in a really massive manner, and I was winning my games. And yet, I really liked. I really liked playing this game just from an educational perspective, because once again it shows us how irrelevant extra material can be in face of intangible problems. So I'm once again reminding you people that that's exactly what oftentimes happens in chess. Material is not everything, and I hope that with this or maybe with this reminder, you will kind of implement this into your thinking process when you play your chess games, because it is really important. It can help you win a lot of games if you just remember that your pieces are only as good as the amount of work they can do for accomplishing your long-term goals. So with that said, once again, my apologies for taking forever just to look through a singular game, but I have a couple of more games that I'll probably show you over the course of the next few weeks. So stay tuned. I will be back on St. Louis Chess Club's Twitch channel tomorrow at 1:30 p.m. Central Time. So for people who like watching me stream live, that's exactly what's going to happen. I'll be there playing people from the chat, so make sure you stop by. And on that note, I wish you guys good night or good day, depending on where you are. And I'll see you all at some point. Take care. Bye-bye.